This BBC podcast is supported by ads outside the UK.
I'm Ian Glenn, and this is Real Vikings. Remote Scottish monasteries overrun with pagan warriors. Longboats cutting through Canada's icy waters. Norse traders in the desert sands of North Africa. The Vikings terrified the medieval world, yet they beguile us today. Who were they really? Real Vikings. From the Noiser Podcast Network. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome to You're Dead to Me, the BBC Radio 4 comedy podcast that takes history seriously. My name is Greg Jenner, I'm a public historian, author and broadcaster. And today, we're chucking our tea in the harbour and charging back to the 18th century for a very special 250th anniversary episode about the American War of Independence / American Revolution, whatever you call it. And to help our cause, we have two fearsome freedom fighters. In History Corner, he's Professor of American History at the University of Edinburgh, where his research focuses on revolutionary and early national America. Maybe you've read one of his wonderful books, including A Revolutionary Friendship, Washington, Jefferson and the American Republic. It's Professor Frank Cogliano. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you very much, Greg. I'm thrilled to be here.
Delighted to have you here. And in Comedy Corner, he is an Emmy and Grammy award-winning comedian and actor. You'll know him from many of my favourite sitcoms, including BoJack Horseman, AP Bio, Parks and Recreation, Veep, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The Goldbergs, The King of Queens. His amazing film career has put him in the Marvel Universe, the Zoolander Zooniverse, the Ghostbusters Ghouliverse, and the Pixar Tooniverse. He is Remy the Rat himself from Pixar's Ratatouille. It's the wonderful Patton Oswalt. Welcome, Patton.
Thank you, Greg. I'm looking forward to winning some big prizes today.
You've played a history professor in 22 Jump Street.
Oh, that's right. I did.
Yeah, you did.
Wow.
I also believe you are named after General Patton.
Yes, I was named after George S. Patton. My dad was a Marine, had high hopes, I guess. And glad to be here today on this podcast. I'm sure he's very proud.
If you've played a historian and you are the son of a proud military man, do you know a fair bit about American military history?
I like history a lot. I read a lot of history. Really enjoy Thomas Cahill's books. I love hinged history moments. That's something that I'm kind of obsessed with where, something could have completely gone the other way. Clive James is really deep into that kind of world of, I think his quote is like, history is basically a record of the way things didn't have to be. I love that aspect of it.
All right, so I feel like you probably know a fair bit, but we'll be testing you today to see what's stuck and what else we can teach you.
So, what do you know?
This is the So What Do You Know? This is where I guess what you, our lovely listener, might know about today's subject. And surely everyone knows that July 4th, 1776 was Independence Day in America. Or was it? There's no shortage of pop culture reminders, from the truly terrible Mel Gibson film The Patriot to the truly incredible Hamilton musical by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Or for slightly subtler references, you've got Nick Cage in National Treasure, featuring a treasure map on the back of the Declaration of Independence, or Will Smith nuking an alien spacecraft on the 4th of July in Independence Day. Like I said, subtle. But why did American colonists rebel against Britain? How did they defeat an imperial superpower? And can we spill the tea on why Bostonians spilled the tea? Let's find out.
By the way, we're both American. Did you bring us here to apologize or for revolting? Or it's a little weird you brought two Americans in for this.
All right, Patton, let's test your knowledge. How many British American colonies were there in British America prior to the Revolution?
13?
It's a good canonical answer, and that is the answer I would have given, but...
But?
Okay, the professor's going to say,
Please.
well, actually... Well, actually, Patton, there were 26 colonies in British North America and the Caribbean.
Oh.
If I may, Greg.
Please, go.
So what happened was the English, and I'm using English deliberately in this context, apologies to our Scottish listeners. Mm-hmm. During the 17th century, the English established colonies, the colonies we know of on the eastern seaboard of North America.
Right.
But under the Stuarts, they also established colonies elsewhere in North America and, importantly, in the Caribbean. And by the mid-18th century, when Britain emerges victorious from the 7 Years' War, it's got 26 colonies. So there are the 13 that rebel, and just for our listeners, we'll see if I can name them, right?
Yeah, go for it.
New Hampshire.
Yes.
Massachusetts.
Lovely.
Rhode Island. Connecticut.
Yep.
New York. New Jersey. Pennsylvania. Delaware. Maryland. Virginia. North Carolina. South Carolina. in Georgia.
He's done it. Okay, so we've got 26 colonies, 13 of them on the eastern seaboard of the States. How do they work as colonies? What's the governance?
Largely self-governing. They've kind of developed under their own devices for much of the period, the first 100 years after their settlement. And so each of them has its own assembly, for example, which they see as equivalent to Parliament. They've achieved a degree of autonomy as a result of this. And when Britain wins the 7 Years' War, what Americans will call the French and Indian War, Britain emerges victorious there. They have to govern this big space, but they're pushing up against people who've developed their own ways of thinking and their own ways of doing things. They're pretty used to governing themselves.
Right.
Broadly speaking, they share this culture, which they believe they got from Britain.
Yeah.
They talk about the rights of Englishmen all the time, and they're not wrong about that, but they talk about, we've got the rights of Englishmen. When we're governing ourselves, that's because we're English or we're British.
Right. And they've won the 7 Years' War, which, I mean, you could have been speaking French, Patton.
Exactly. Well, kill them all.
Obvious question, Frank. How does it go so wrong? Because we've heard that Britain has won this 7-year war, this very expensive war, and everything is rosy.
Yes, they vanquished France finally. Mm-hmm. It has a huge public debt as a result of the war, and it's looking to pay down that debt. Here's a good factoid for you. Mm-hmm. The average person in Britain pays 26 shillings per year in taxes. The average person in Massachusetts pays 1. So...
Well.
Pay up, Patton. You owe it.
So the Crown says...
I'm really, hang on. Let me get my... Do you take Zelle? Oh, my God.
The government says, okay, you need to pay. You've benefited from this conflict. You ought to pay for your own defense.
Right.
And what did we say? How did we react to that?
Well, Patton, you may know that Americans love to pay taxes.
Oh, my God. Get out of my way. Let me mail this check in.
So what the British did was various governments instituted a variety of taxes. The most famous, the one we did learn about in school, the Stamp Act, of course,
in
1765 is the most infamous. And that's unprecedented because it's a direct tax on Americans in their colonies. People in Massachusetts say, we pay taxes that are levied by our government. We're represented in that government. That's the way the system works. If you're paying 26 times more than we are, you're paying too much tax. And so their position is not necessarily just greed. It's actually, there is kind of intellectual consistency there.
We haven't mentioned the Townshend Acts. They're the official parliamentary acts which allow for the taxation of the colonists, right?
Yes. So what happens is there's widespread resistance to the Stamp Act in 1765. Parliament repeals it in 1766, but adopts something called the Declaratory Act in 1766, which is basically a parent saying, okay, I'm giving in to you, but next time you have to do what I say. Because the Declaratory Act says...
Which always works. Always works.
They say, we're repealing the Stamp Act, but the Declaratory Act says, but we have the authority to tax you in all cases whatsoever. Sure. And the following year, they adopt the Townshend duties. The Townshend duties are more import duties, more tariffs.
So, Frank, these harsh parliamentary acts, they lead to violence, right? Because we've got the Boston Massacre in 1770 when British troops are actually firing on people.
Yes. So what happened was the resistance to these taxes is mainly centered in the port towns because those are the only cities in the colonies. So Boston, New York, Newport, Richmond,
that's
Philadelphia.
Where all the trade's coming.
And that's where the trade is,
right.
Charleston, etc. And that's also where there are crowds and sailors who can be mobilized, things like that. And there are groups that form called the Sons of Liberty that enforce boycotts and resistance to these taxes. So the resistance was centered in Boston. It wasn't only in Boston, but it was most virulent in Boston. Mm-hmm. And as a result, the British sent troops to Boston in 1768, redcoat troops. There are a series of incidents that take place, the most prominent of which occurs on March 5th, 1770, an incident known as the Boston Massacre. 8 civilians are shot, 5 of whom die. There was a crowd of up to 300 people who were harassing British soldiers, throwing snowballs, ice balls, bricks, and so on at the soldiers.
Bricks. Okay. We get the Boston Tea Party after that, which, again, sounds like a sort of genteel Jane Austen thing, but it's a paramilitary organization, this, Sons of Liberty?
They are certainly a political movement that is willing to use force or threaten to use force, and those threats are credible because they've done it enough. So the background of this is Parliament adopts something called the Tea Act, which is meant to help the British East India Tea Company, which has huge interest in Parliament, little corruption there. And this calls attention to people to taxation again. So a group of about 60 Sons of Liberty, rather crudely disguised as indigenous Americans. They board the tea ships. There are 3 of them in Boston Harbor. They destroy 342 chests of tea, but they clean up after themselves.
Wait, they do?
They do. They also, nobody's meant to pilfer anything else off these cargo ships or off the wharf. So it's meant to be a controlled demonstration to show that there are limits to resistance.
So what does the king's government do? What does George III do? You've got the tea protest. Is he sitting and stewing? Is he letting rebellion brew? Is he stirring the pot until things boil over? Tea pun, tea pun, tea pun. What is he doing?
Parliament penalizes the colonies. The king and his government want to take a hard line. They adopt a series of acts called the Coercive Acts to punish Boston.
Good branding.
Yeah, the government of Massachusetts is replaced with a military. The governor of Massachusetts is replaced with a military governor. The port of Boston's closed until the tea's paid for, and so on. There are a series of acts intended to punish Boston and also to separate Massachusetts from the other colonies.
Oh, like to make the other colonies go like we don't want anything to do with them, that. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Like
so
they're being
divide and conquer.
divide and conquer fashion, the
Very
British
nice.
way. That then leads to the outraged colonists forming the first Continental Congress, headed up by the first president in American history, a great man from Virginia, such as yourself, and his name is...
Hang on, George Hanson?
No.
Not George Washington.
No.
I know that George Washington. Who? What's his name?
Frank?
Peyton Randolph.
Peyton Randolph. What?
Who?
Well, wow. Wait a minute. Go right ahead, please. I've literally never heard this name. I've heard the name George Hanson. I've never heard Peyton Randolph.
I don't have a lot to give you, Patton, except he's a very prominent political figure in Virginia in the mid-1770s. He's a lawyer. He's a planter. He's a big deal in Virginia, and he gets elected to preside over this first Continental Congress.
So technically, he's the first president.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay, and what is the Congress? What's their policy then? What do they agree?
They agree on a number of things. They agree that the individual colonies should start raising militias to prepare for a possible war.
Right, okay, so that's a serious one, that.
That's very serious, but they're not providing any money for that. They're just saying you should do this. They say that the
Stand
colonies...
back and stand by.
Yes, exactly. The colonies should boycott British goods. So they're responding to the British closure of the port of Boston by saying, we're not buying any British goods. They want to stop paying British taxes and, of course, not obey the Coercive Acts. Okay. And they adopt a Declaration of Rights in October of 1774, which says that they, that is the colonies, are entitled to life, liberty, and property, and that they have never ceded to any foreign power whatever a right to dispose of either without their consent. So this is about no taxation without representation.
Yeah.
Life, liberty, and property, which comes from John Locke. We're not quite to life, liberty, and happiness yet. We'll get there.
When did you get the split between colonists and loyalists? When did that split happen?
It's kind of two parts. When the war breaks out in the spring of 75, it starts because people have to start making choices, but really with the Declaration of Independence, because it's whether either you support independence or you don't.
Right.
And that's when. So,
Okay.
but in this,
So when
moment,
there's a referendum, really.
in this, exactly, Greg.
Yeah.
In this moment, they're still kind of British, kind of American, and trying to work out what the boundary between the two is.
So the Americans are starting to stockpile weapons. They're starting to sort of drill troops sort of quietly in the corner. But the British authorities obviously not terribly keen on this. And so Parliament declares Massachusetts in rebellion. So particularly one state in rebellion. And
That
then,
Tea Party thing really stung them.
Yeah, I did. I mean, it's a lot of money they
just
lost.
Really dwelt on that.
I've seen Mary Poppins, the Bank of England, very upset about it. So Thomas Gage is someone we need to introduce here. Frank, very quickly, who's Thomas Gage? Why
He
is he
is the commander-in-chief of British forces in North America. He's also been appointed as the military governor of Massachusetts under the Coercive Acts. He's got an American wife, interestingly.
Ah.
He is believed to understand Americans.
Taking our women. How dare he? Man.
And Gage is in charge, and he's ordered by the government in early 1775 to do something about Massachusetts.
Yep.
And so he's ordered in February to kind of crack down. Massachusetts is declared in rebellion. He's ordered to crack down on the leadership of the resistance there. In April, he sends troops to Lexington and Concord to both seize munitions that the so-called Patriot militia are stockpiling and arrest the leaders of the resistance in the colony. Lexington and Concord are now suburbs of Boston, 15, 20 miles west of Boston. They arrive in Lexington first. They're confronted by some militiamen on Lexington Green, and there's a brief exchange of shots. Nobody knows who fired the first shot. 8 militiamen were killed. The rest ran off. Then the British go on to Concord. There's a fight at Concord Bridge that only lasts about 3 minutes. There's a larger fight over the course of the rest of the day, but the fighting at Lexington and Concord is relatively brief.
Nothing good comes out of the suburbs. I've always said everything bad comes out of the suburbs. So there you go.
And we then get the Second Continental Congress, because the first one achieved some things, but now the shots have been fired. So what is the second?
It's starting to act like a government now.
Right.
The first one wasn't really a government. It was sort of, hey, let's get together and coordinate our response.
Okay.
The Second Continental Congress is acting like a government because there's a war on. But again, still looking forwards and backwards at the same time, because what they really are saying, they're saying, King George, please intervene and stop this. They sent something called the Olive Branch Petition to him. 17,000 Patriot militiamen are besieging the British in Boston. The Continental Congress is raising an army. But they're also saying, hey, we want to make up. Let's just go back to the way things were. So they're in this weird, between April of 1775 and July of 1776, there's a kind of really weird moment where they're waging war, but also appealing to the king to intervene and stop it.
And Peyton Randolph, he's had to resign. He's no longer president.
He's gone.
When do we get George Washington showing up then? When's his...
Yeah.
He goes to the Second Continental Congress representing Virginia, and he wears his uniform to say, hey, I happen to be a soldier. And they appoint him commander-in-chief of the army.
So the Olive Branch Petition has been offered by the Second Continental Congress to George III, and George III says...
He says absolutely not?
He doesn't even read it.
What?
Doesn't even read it.
Do you think he did that like as a power move, as an insult, or why didn't he read it?
Professor Frank, give us a
Help
psychological reading.
Well, to accept it is to recognize the authority of Congress, which he doesn't.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't accept it.
And he declares the Proclamation Rebellion.
He declares them in rebellion in October of 1775.
So at moments like this, Patton, we need a bit of common sense.
Oh.
By which I mean common sense. Do you know it?
Was that Thomas Paine's pamphlet?
It is. Yeah, very good.
Yay! I know something.
Well done.
All right, yes.
What do you know about it?
Nothing.
Great. Thank you for coming in.
Go right ahead. Please, take it off my hands.
Thomas Paine is an English radical who emigrated to Philadelphia in 1774, so he's arrived relatively late. He writes this pamphlet called Common Sense, which is published on January 10th, 1776, that basically says independence is the answer here. Give up your loyalty to the crown. The king's not going to be there for you. A parent doesn't wage war on its children. He can turn a phrase. The guy can write. It sells 150,000 copies. It's by far and away the biggest bestseller of the 18th century. Probably.
I've only seen the movie version.
And he makes an incredibly powerful case for independence. This is a reassuring and incredibly powerful message.
And so the Continental Congress appoints a committee to draft the Declaration of Independence. And do you know who's on that committee?
Jefferson,
Yep.
Hancock, Clymer. Each colony is represented? Is there 13 people on it or more? There's more?
No.
What? I'm wrong.
There are 5.
5?
Yeah.
Who are the 5?
Okay. Jefferson.
Yeah.
Benjamin Franklin. John Adams.
Right.
Roger Sherman.
Never
Robert
heard of him.
Livingston.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of
Sherman's from
Livingston or
Connecticut.
Sherman?
Livingston's from New York. They're the two that always get forgotten.
Yeah, these are poor guys. They've done so much.
Guys.
They wrote one of the most important documents in history, and everyone's like, no, who?
Yeah.
Jefferson presents it to Congress on 28th of June. It's voted for on
July 4th, 1776?
July 2nd.
Oh, my God. American education, folks.
I mean, I understand why you've said that, but
Yeah.
John Adams famously says on July 2nd, I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shows and games and sports and guns and bonfire and illuminations from one end of the continent to the other from this time forward forevermore. He's basically saying July 2nd will forever be.
Boy, could he call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do we think it's July 4th?
Yeah, why do we?
And was it July 4th?
Well, what happens on July 4th is they vote on independence on July 2nd. 12 colonies vote in favor of it. New York abstains. Then they spend the next 2 days editing, and then they formally adopt the document, the declaration itself, on the 4th of July. So that is the date, but the vote was on the 2nd. Adams recognized that the vote was incredibly important, thought, this is the day.
Yeah.
And New York comes along on the 2nd of August and goes, all right.
Yeah. Guess if you're all going.
Fine, whatever. Great, we're in. Okay.
The colonies are abuzz with people exalting the cause of liberty. But I have to ask, what about indigenous peoples? What we might call Native Americans. What about free and enslaved black people? Are their liberties mentioned at all? Is anyone thinking about them?
And are women mentioned?
Right.
Excellent questions. The Declaration, of course, says all men are created equal. So there's gendered language there. There's no doubt about that. Those three groups, of course, constitute the majority of the population by a considerable margin. There are two things you need to bear in mind. In 1776, the vast majority of people who lived in North America were indigenous.
Right.
Yeah.
You mustn't ever forget that. And in those seaboard colonies that are rebelling and declaring independence, 20% of the population was enslaved. So on one hand, we can say this is liberty for me and not for thee. The question of what will happen to both indigenous people and enslaved people, the war calls this into question all the time because both sides seek to enlist the support of Black and Indigenous soldiers, for example. We have the kind of horrible paradox that enslaved people are fighting each other for their liberty because both sides promise them liberty if they'll support them.
Yeah.
So it's a complicated question.
And for women, do any of the states allow women to vote?
New Jersey.
Really?
Which doesn't get a lot of credit.
Wow.
New Jersey is...
Let them vote. Fine, What are you going to do? Let them go.
In the aftermath of the revolution, New Jersey adopts a constitution that allows women who can meet the property requirements to vote in the state to vote. New Jersey women are the first women in America to vote. Now, the vote's taken away from them in the early 19th century.
Right.
But there's a period of about 2 decades when women vote in New Jersey.
Amazing. Let's get back to the war. We get another big win, Battle of Saratoga, which is a huge one for Washington's army. And this is a big win over John Burgoyne, the British general.
That's right. He's defeated by the Continental Army, not by Washington.
Oh, okay.
There's another general in command, Horatio Gates. Washington has
Horatio Gates, good name.
Nice name. Very good name.
And Benedict Arnold is prominent in that, fighting for the Patriots.
Okay.
But the point is, Burgoyne's...
Now, what happened to him?
He's beloved.
Never heard from again. The reason Saratoga is important is it's the first really big victory that the colonists, the rebels, inflict on the British in almost a year.
Yeah.
And it shows the French that the rebels are credible. Because of the victory at Saratoga, Benjamin Franklin, who's then American ambassador in Paris, negotiates a formal treaty with France. Right. And in February of 1778, France recognizes the United States, enters into a military alliance, and suddenly Britain's in a lot of trouble.
The big military win that shocks everyone is Yorktown. 1781, the Americans defeat a big British army, and this is the end of the war, which no one's seen that coming, right?
Yes, the French and the Americans defeat a big British army.
Sorry.
And that's really, really important.
Je suis désolé.
So what happened is after Saratoga and the French alliance, the British concentrate on the southern colonies because they're the more lucrative, and they've kind of written off the north, and they send an army under General Cornwallis to the south. That army fights around the south. It ends up going to Yorktown, Virginia, seeking resupply. It's blockaded there in the fall of 1781. A combined Franco-American army marches south from New York, and there's some fighting. There's a siege that goes on. Cornwallis ultimately surrenders. Now, it need not be the end of the war, though.
Right.
Because Britain fought France for 25 years.
I was going to say, Britain's a superpower. We can fight
Britain
forever.
has the means to
continue.
continue.
In the words of Captain America, I can do this all day.
Yeah.
The government collapsed because the war wasn't popular in Britain.
So the war ends, and there are peace treaty. Do you know where the peace treaty's held?
I don't.
Do you want to guess?
Philadelphia?
No, it's Paris.
Oh.
Sort of neutral territory, but not really, because the French have been
go
in a
to-
war,
okay,
right?
yeah,
so they've all got to go to Paris. And it's a sort of big old kind of like, we'll have this, you have that. But the thing that's quite interesting is that they're discussing kind of boring stuff, like fishing treaties.
It's not boring if you live in New England.
All right, sorry, take it back.
And John Adams is a New Englander.
Yeah. Sure, okay.
So North Sea fishery is an incredibly important industry. But yes, they're arguing about fishery.
How much cod can I catch? I got to know.
But they do talk about fishing. Crucially, the Americans and British make a side deal. According to the alliance of 1778, the French say to the Americans, under the terms of that treaty, no separate peace with the British. We're in this together. Mm-hmm. The Americans make a separate peace. They betray the French.
But hang on. Wasn't part of the British thinking that, fine, we'll let them have this one. They won't be able to sustain this. Yeah. And we'll just slowly chip away at them and we'll get them back.
Yes. So the British give incredibly generous borders to the new United States. All the territories south of the Great Lakes and west to the Mississippi River.
Wow, okay, so that's a huge tranche of land.
Basically
Wow.
a third of the present continental United States, with the exception of Florida, which goes to the Spanish. And the reason the British do that is they think this is going to fail. They're going to fail.
You'll be back.
We're going to get it.
You'll be back.
We're going to get all this back. It's going to fall into our laps. Right. Now, if we'd said this a couple of years ago, we'd say, well, they got fooled. Maybe they're playing a long game, the British, and then we are going to be back. Who knows? Maybe it is going to fail.
Actually, wait a minute. Are we seeing, that is a very long game.
The longest of long cons.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
The nuance window!
This is where Patton and I sit silently to ponder our fishing-related treaty clauses, while Professor Frank takes to the congressional floor for 2 minutes to tell us something important about the American War of Independence / Revolution, whatever you call it. My stopwatch is ready, Frank. Take it away.
The nuance I would like to develop in the nuance window is this is British history as well as American history, and we make a mistake in seeing this as American history only. We need to interpret this as British history as well as American history, these events, because it takes two sides. But also, I think we should rethink our understanding of Britain in this period. To some extent, the American Revolution is a failure of the British Constitution. The British Constitution can't accommodate Britons who live overseas. The Americans, that's what their message is from 1765 down to 1775. We're just like you, and we have the same rights you do. And Parliament can't accept that, and Parliament doesn't recognize that. And the British Constitution, as flexible as it is historically, can't accommodate that. And so to some extent, this is all a result of what might be seen as a British constitutional crisis that in turn leads Americans to create their own constitution, and they want a written constitution because they say the problem with Britain is the constitution isn't written. So America goes off on its own way, but then Britain historically was often presented as a sort of failure for Britain, and it is, except the British Empire continues to grow and thrive for another century. However, they learn their lesson. They don't give rights to settlers anymore and colonists. They don't say you're on a par with us. They don't allow them to have their assemblies, nor do they ever tax another colony again. So Britain does learn and adapt, and its empire is not the same as a result of these events. So these are incredibly important events for the United States. We need to see these events as British events as well and see them in the context of British constitutional and imperial history.
Amazing. 2 minutes exactly. Thank you.
Whoa! What, Professor! Yeah. That was a quill drop.
Do you feel like you've learned some stuff here?
I actually did learn some stuff. There was a lot wanting in my high school and college education.
Oh, I think you did great.
Yeah,
very,
thank
very
you.
good. A listener for more American political history, check out our sequel episode on Becoming America with Chris Addison. We've also got episodes on the abolitionists, Sojourner Truth. We've got one on Frederick Douglass. For more South American independence movements, we have one on Simon Bolivar, which is very good fun. And remember, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please share the show with your friends. Subscribe to You're Dead to Me on BBC Sounds in the UK. I'd just like to say a huge thank you to our guest. In History Corner, we had the fantastic Professor Frank Cogliano from the University of Edinburgh. Thank you, Frank.
My pleasure. Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
And in Comedy Corner, we had the outstanding Patton Oswalt. Thank you, Patton.
It's so good to learn about my home country of America. Thank you.
And to you, lovely listener, join me next time as we fight to free another neglected historical topic. But for now, I'm off to go and chuck 340 chests of coffee into Boston Harbour. It's not a political protest. I just hate coffee. Bye!
Hello, it's Lucy Worsley here, and we're back with a brand new series of Lady Swindlers.
Here we are in cell number 1. I'm just shutting us in, Ross. Wow.
Following in the footsteps of some all-new criminals.
Can you take me down to the other end of Baker Street, please?
Certainly, jump in.
Thank you.
Join me and my all-female team of detectives as we revisit the audacious crimes of women trying to make it in a world made for men.
This is a story of working class women trying to get by. This is survival.
Lady Swindlers Season 2 with Lucy Worsley from BBC Radio 4. Listen now on BBC Sounds.
I'm Ian Glenn, and this is Real Vikings. Remote Scottish monasteries overrun with pagan warriors. Longboats cutting through Canada's icy waters. Norse traders in the desert sands of North Africa. The Vikings terrified the medieval world, yet they beguile us today. Who were they really? Real Vikings, from the Noiser Podcast Network. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.